And I never cease to be amazed at how good God is, and in these tough economic times, we ask that our holiday love offering this year be to help the community of saints that have suffered in this economic times. And all through December, as you were looking in the bulletin, you noticed that it was like 700 and then 900 and 1,000, and it didn't look like people were contributing much, but when the online giving came through, we were just about $700 short of $30,000. So we want to praise God for that, for your generosity, and those of you that are in need, and this is for you. And so there's a process. You call our office, Preeti, our administrative assistant, and there are some forms to fill out. We want to be careful in how we do this, but God has given us through you quite a bit to help those of you in need. So please take advantage of this generosity that God has given. Another aspect that amazes me about God is that this sermon topic that I'm preaching on today was not decided this last week, but long before there was any earthquake. And it's in such sharp contrast to what we've been talking about that it almost seems that God says, I knew this was going to happen, and I need to have you talk about something that's bright and fun and encouraging. And so the topic that was selected months ago is the wedding at Cana. So here we're going from tragedy, from disaster, to one of the funnest events in the Christian life, celebrating a family coming together, a new family. And wedding traditions differ a lot around the world. If you go up to Amish country, which isn't that far from here, if you notice your neighbor planting extra celery stalks, you know that there's going to be a wedding. And if it's in the fall, around mid-October, the wedding announcement is going to be given out. And if your neighbor has usually planted 100 stalks of celery, now they're going to plant 400 stalks of celery. Now, what are they going to use that celery for? Well, celery is an important ingredient in Amish weddings in the food. They make casseroles out of celery. There's celery soufflés and dishes, and celery is just a big part of this. And after the couple have married, they go to stay in the bride's home until the spring, and sometimes longer. And then during that time, they visit all the people that came to the wedding. They visit their homes, and that's when they usually get the gifts given to them, is when they visit their homes. Very different from our tradition. In Ireland, a woman might receive from her young man, her friend, a bracelet made of hair. And if she takes that bracelet and puts it on, and accepts it and puts it on, she has signified now that she is his for the rest of her life. And if he doesn't want to do a bracelet of hair, he'll make a little circle of straw, intertwine flowers in it, or maybe bells, and give it to her, and she'll wear it in her hair or around her neck. That's one of the Irish customs. If you go to the Orkney Islands, where I sold books for 2 summers when I was in college, the friends of the bridegroom will ambush him sometime, and they will sprinkle flour all over him, and then treacle and feathers. Now, you don't know much about treacle in this country, but treacle is a syrup, golden Lyle syrup. That was one of my favorite spreads at home. But anyway, can you imagine him covered with flour and treacle and feathers, and then they put him in the back of a truck and they drive him through town, honking the horn, yelling and screaming to draw attention to him. When it's all done, they take him down to the sea and wash him and clean him off. If you go up to Alaska, to some of the Eskimo tribes in the north, there, if you're going to get married, you have to have permission of the village elders. If the elders say yes, you can get married. If the elders say no, tough about it. And then the groom's family has to have a year to raise the money to pay the dowry for the bride. And they visit their relatives, they visit their friends, and they will then give to the bride's family gifts such as bread, toaster, they have toasters up there, rifles, seal skins, and then once the engagement has been settled, the groom is obligated for 1 year to work for the bride's family, fishing, hunting, doing chores, cleaning the house, whatever they tell him to do for 1 year. That's a humbling experience, isn't it, men? to go through something like that. But we're going to look at today another tradition, another ceremony that's found in John chapter 2. Here we have the story of a wedding at Cana, starting with verse 1. On the third day, a wedding took place at Cana in Galilee. Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. When the wine was gone, Jesus' mother said to him, "They have no more wine." "Dear woman, why do you involve me?" Jesus replied. "My time has not yet come." His mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." And nearby stood 6 stone water jars, the kind used by the Jews for ceremonial washing, each holding from 20 to 30 gallons. Jesus said to the servants, "Fill the jars with water." So they filled them to the brim. Then he told them, "Now draw some out and take it to the master of the banquet." They did so, and the master of the banquet tasted the water that had been turned into wine. He did not realize where it had come from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew. Then he called the bridegroom aside and said, "Everyone brings out the choice wine first, and then the cheaper wine, after the guests have had too much to drink. But you saved the best to last." This, the first of his miraculous signs, Jesus performed in Cana of Galilee. He thus revealed his glory, and his disciples put their faith in him. Wonderful occasion, festive occasion, joyous occasion. I'm sure just about everyone in this room has either been in a wedding ceremony or gone and been in the audience with some kind of wedding. And there's 2 points that I want to make today in my message that I give. The first point is that Jesus liked to have fun. Hear that carefully, because too many Christians think that fun is somehow not really part of the Christian life. Jesus liked to have fun, and he liked to go to parties, because weddings in those days were a 7-day event. It wasn't just 3 or 4 hours like our weddings are. It lasted for a whole week with festivities and dancing and drinking. And Jesus and his 5 disciples that he had at that time and his mother came to be part of this wedding and to participate in the festivities. Dare I say, Jesus was dancing along with the rest of them. That may not be the image that some of us might have of Jesus, but he was there because he wanted to acknowledge this group of individuals. And it seems like his mother knew the people, was involved in some way, because she was the one telling the servants what to do. And some people think that it might have been some relative that was there. And so Jesus kindly, it seems abrupt in our language, but in the Hebrew language it was fine when he said woman in the King James, "My hour has not yet come." He was just trying to tell her, I'm in charge of my life now. You're not the one telling me what to do. But he does take charge. He goes to the servants, tells them to fill up the water jugs, the stone jugs, 20 to 30 gallons. Let's say there's 30 gallons, 6 of them. That's how much? 180 gallons. And he turns that water into wine. Now just think for a moment, what are you going to do with 180 gallons of wine? That tells me that a lot of people, that wasn't a small wedding. Of course, it has to last. We don't know where in the 7 days they had run out of wine, but the 180 gallons was a lot of wine for people to drink. And the servants, they don't know what's happening, and they pour the water in, and Jesus says, all right, now take them and dip in and put into a container and take to the master of ceremonies, and they do that, and they look at it astonished. It was water. They know. They put it in there. And now it was wine, and they take it to the master of ceremonies, and he tastes it, and his eyes open up, and he says, wow, this is the best wine that I have ever tasted. And he tells the bridegroom, because the custom was you give the best wine first, and when people got a little bit drunk, a little bit soggy, a little bit, past it, now they give the cheap stuff, and you're not going to know the difference anyway, except that you're getting more wine in there. Now, I want to take a slight time out for my Adventist friends in the congregation. Those of you that are visitors, those of you that didn't grow up in the Adventist tradition, bear with me a little bit. But I do have to educate my Adventist folks sometime. And in the Adventist church, we have a requirement that we don't drink alcohol in our church. And I support that because I can tell you story after story of how alcohol has ruined so many people's lives and has caused so many billions of dollars of damage to this country every year in lost workers, in illness, in accidents, and so on. But it's not a biblical principle or moral issue that to drink wine or alcohol is a sin or evil. Are you hearing me out on that? Let me show you from Scripture. When Isaac blessed Jacob, part of his blessing said in Genesis 27:28, he said, "May God give you of heaven's dew and of earth's richness, an abundance of grain and new wine." Now the significance of the expression new wine is found in the words of Jesus when he was talking to the disciples, and we read in Luke, Matthew 9, verse 17. He says, "Neither do men pour new wine," here's the phrase again, "new wine into old wineskins. If they do, the skins will burst, the wine will run out, and the wineskins will be ruined. No, they pour new wine into new wineskins, and both are preserved." Why is Jesus saying this? Because the old wineskins have become dried and rigid. No more give to them. The new wine is in the fermentation stage. The new wine is giving off gases and expanding. And if you put that new wine into those rigid wineskins, it would break and crack and destroy. So you have to put it into new, supple wineskins. So as it ferments and expands, the vessel expands with it. God in Psalms says this, "He, God, makes grass grow for the cattle and plants for men to cultivate, bringing forth food from the earth. Wine that gladdens the heart of men." Wine. And some people have tried to make out, oh, this must be always non-alcoholic. The Hebrew and Greek words, there's no distinctive word for alcohol. Sometimes it's alcoholic, sometimes it's non-alcoholic, but there is no one word that you can use, despite the attempts of some scholars to try and prove it. There is no one word, the same word as you have to look at the context to see what it's talking about. Wine that gladdens the heart of man, oil to make his face shine, and bread that sustains his heart. In the book of Isaiah, the prophet counsels people to come and buy from him. Notice what it says in Isaiah 55:1. "Come, all you who are thirsty, come to the waters, and you who have no money, come buy and eat. Come buy wine and milk without money and without cost." And here wine and milk are listed together as necessities and parts of life. Now, one of the strongest passages that indicates that usually when the Bible is talking about wine, it's talking about the fermented wine, not just the pure juice, is found in the book of Timothy, 1 Timothy. Chapter 3, verse 3. In the New King James Version, this is in the middle of a list of qualifications to be an elder. If you're going to elect an elder or even a deacon to hold position in the church, there's a list of qualifications, and one of them it says there is not given to wine. Now, if it's just grape juice, what's the problem? You can drink lots of grape juice, and it's not going to be any issue. So when you say not given to wine, it's talking about it because if you're given to too much of it, and see what some other translations say that make it clearer. New International Version, not given to drunkenness. American Standard Bible, not addicted to wine. Contemporary English Version, they must not be heavy drinkers. New Century Version, he must not drink too much wine. I've never ever had to tell someone don't drink too much grape juice. Don't drink too much apple juice, unless it's fermented. And then we say you've got to be careful. What we don't realize is that the wine in the Bible was very different from the wine that we have today. It was very diluted. The main way that wine was made was diluted, 3 parts water to 1 part wine. So the alcohol content was very low, and in fact it was more healthy in Bible times to drink wine than to drink water. Water was so polluted and contaminated that it was a common custom to mix some wine with the water to kill the germs so you would be healthy. And the principle in life is to eat and drink that which is most healthy for you, not just have a rigid standard that says regardless. All right, time out for my Adventist friends. Some of you may still disagree with me on this. First point we were making. Jesus came to this wedding, to this party, participated in the festivities because he wanted to show that being a Christian, being a follower of God, is a life of joy. It's a life of happiness. And it's hard for some of us to grasp that and understand that. It's been very hard for me. I grew up in a minister's home. My father was always working. He was far away. I tend to be a workaholic. Growing up as a teenager, going to school, all I did was work and study, and study. When I got married, pretty much the same thing. We've been here in Maryland now 35 years. In those 35 years, I've been to 2 football games, 2 baseball games, about 10 concerts total during that time, and 1 play. Most of the time I eat, I sleep, get some exercise, talk with my wife, and work for the church. I'm trying to change that, and that's part of the reason I'm enjoying this sermon and trying to learn from it, is God says we need to take time out. We need to participate in festivities and social times, and not just keep working all the time, for there's more to life than that. Now his disciples are excited about this miracle. They see Jesus in a new light. The title of this series is From Hero to Pariah. You probably all know what hero is. You know what a pariah is. Pariah is an outcast. A pariah is someone that people don't want to associate with. And so in the 3 messages in this series, Jesus is a hero today, he's a hero next week, but he's a pariah in the next one, and we'll find out about that. So what we're talking about today is how you can be a hero in your family, at work, how you can do no wrong. The title for this message is You Can Do No Wrong. Wouldn't you love that? At work, your boss comes to you, you can do no wrong. I don't know what I could do to have you. I didn't ask my wife permission on this, but I will say it anyway. She'll say to me every now and then, I just don't deserve you. I just don't deserve you. And I'll say, you're quite right. You don't deserve me. I'm just so kind. She'll give me to it afterwards there. But we have a great relationship. And when you first get married, you can do no wrong. You know, you're perfect and things are so great. But after a while, you discover, he's not quite so perfect. And she's not quite so perfect. And you know, after 43 years of marriage, I'm still finding some imperfections in my wife. You know, and I labor with her sometimes. But you know what? She finds some in me too. And she labors with me. And that's why there's love. Because love is the oil. Love is the ointment that soothes you and binds you and keeps all of these things together. That's why when I do marriage counseling and premarital counseling, I always try and find out how much do you love the other person. If you don't truly have deep love, there isn't a foundation to work through the squeaks and the broken gears and the rust that gets in the machinery. And the oil is what makes all of that, the oil of love makes that work. And so when the wine runs out, and the romance begins to fail, what do you do then? And that's the second point in my message. You're excited about your new job. Everything is going great. The boss is marvelous. The fellow workers are wonderful. And then suddenly you discover that he's not perfect, or she's not perfect either. And suddenly the first thrill starts to go. The wine runs out, and it looks like there's disaster ahead, because the worst thing that could happen in a wedding in Palestine was to run out of wine. That showed the groom had not thought well enough ahead of time. The groom was not wealthy enough. The groom was not considerate enough. It was one of the most embarrassing things that could ever happen was to run out of wine. And when we run out of wine, it's embarrassing. It's disappointing. It's soul-searching. Okay, I guess the only thing to do is get a divorce. I guess the only thing is to find another job. I guess the only thing is to sue somebody. I guess the only thing is to transfer to another church, because the wine has run out in that church. And what do we do when the wine has run out? We do the same thing that they did in Jesus' day. We go to Jesus. Jesus was the only one that could fix the problem. Jesus was the only one who in that instant could provide the wine for them. And Jesus says that we are to go to him because he is the one. But you know, if you don't know Jesus, it's very, very difficult. Ernest Hemingway, most of you have probably heard of him, one of the most famous writers, 20th century, was an ambulance driver in the First World War, participated in the Spanish Civil War, won a Nobel Prize for literature, Lived in Cuba for a while, wrote one of his most famous books, The Old Man in the Sea there. Acclaimed writer, friends from boxers to presidents, do you know it, liked who he was. But you know, the wine eventually ran out in his life because he didn't have a relationship with God. And his biographer, Carlos Baker, writes in his book about him, he says, Sunday morning dawned bright and cloudless. Ernest awoke early as always, and he put on the red emperor's robe and padded softly down the carpeted stairway. The early sunlight lay in pools on the living room floor. He had noticed that the guns were locked up in the basement, but the keys, as he well knew, were on the window ledge above the kitchen sink. He tiptoed down the basement stairs and unlocked the storage room. It smelled as dank as a grave. He chose a double-barreled shotgun with a tight choke. He'd used it for years to shoot pigeons. He took some shells from one of the boxes in the storage room, closed and locked the door, climbed the basement steps. If he saw the bright day outside, it did not deter him. He crossed the living room to the front foyer, a shrine-like entryway 5 feet by 7 feet, with oak-paneled walls and a floor of linoleum tile. He slipped in 2 shells, lowered the gun butt carefully to the floor, leaned forward, pressed the twin barrels against his forehead just above the eyebrows, and tripped both triggers. Now, most of us in this room would not do that, but we've all felt those times of despair, those times of emptiness, those times when the wine has run out, the joy has gone, the festivities have gone. And all I can say is that we must go back to Jesus. We must take that time with Jesus. And there's no magic formula to do that. It's simply, and it is so simple, and I'm amazed how often we forget it. We simply raise our eyes to heaven and say, God, the wine is gone, and I need new wine. I need a miracle in my life. And God will do that. He never disappoints us. I know there are people who say, so I pray to God and I don't hear him and I don't see him. And God says that's where you need to persevere. When Elijah was on Mount Carmel praying for rain, it says he had to pray 7 times before the rain came. What had he given up after the first time? What had he given up after the second or third time? God knew the rain was coming. He knew God was going to send the rain, but he still had to pray 7 times before God answered his prayer. And so part of finding that new wine is to persevere with God and to take that time with him. Because remember the words that we read from Isaiah 55:1. Come, all you who are thirsty. Come to the waters, and you who have no money, come, buy and eat. Come buy wine and milk without money and without cost. Here's a paradox. God's saying, come buy, and then he says, I don't have any money to buy. God says, that's fine, it's free. And that's the wonder of our God, is the grace is totally free. What Jesus did for us on the cross, when he died and gave up his life and said, it is finished, he said, it is finished for you and me as far as sin is concerned. It is finished as far as God's righteousness is. And when we grab hold of God, he looks at us and he counts us perfect. He fills us with that new wine experience. It doesn't matter how we might feel. God is faithful, and he has promised, and he has accepted us. And as I try and say every week, he looks at you as if you've never sinned. He looks at, because there's no perfect people in this congregation. All of us mess up all the time. Some of us are more honest about it. Others try and hide it. But we're all messed up people in this congregation. And God says, I just want your trust, and then leave it to me to grow you. And we all grow at different stages. We all grow at different spaces. You've heard my sermons on baby Christians drinking milk. They're just as much saved as those on hard food. We have harder trouble with them because they mess up and poop more than other people because they're babies. That's part of being the Christian life. But as long as we're hanging on to God, God says, I will get you through. It may take you some time. You may have to persevere. But if you'll come to me, I'm going to give you that milk and that wine that you cannot buy, because there is no way that you can merit or take in that salvation that I've already provided for you. And that's the joy that comes from worshiping and being with God. He says, I will perform a miracle for you. Who changed the water into wine, will change your life into one of disappointment, into one of joy, into one of fear, into one of faith, into one of despair, to one of hope. He says, I will do it. And in John 10:10, when he was talking about the devil and the thief and how they come and steal everything from you, Jesus says right there, he says the thief's purpose is to steal and kill and destroy. But he says, my purpose is to give them a rich and satisfying life. And that's why Christians should be the happiest people in all the world, going to parties the most of anyone in the world. People should say, you're a party animal because you love the Lord so much, and I see you so loved. Not in the wrong sense of that term, but people should see in Christians, in us, the most happy, joyous, loving, satisfying person, because that's what Jesus says right here. I want you to have a satisfying and abundant life, as one translation puts it. And that will happen and can happen and is happening to every one of us who worships and believes and trusts in the one who changed water into wine, into disappointment, into joy and hope. May that be our experience. Amen.